Well, hello everybody, it's Dan from Dan's Fish, your friendly fishmonger, and I am here to do a fish room tour. I did a fish room tour of my old fish room a while ago, and since then I've totally redone it. The old fish room was about a quarter of the size of this new fish room, and it's been up and running for a few months now, and so all systems have had a little while to get dialed in, and it's ready to show. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the tour. So I'm gonna go around the room. I'll show you tank by tank kind of what I have going on, and as I do that I'll break away occasionally to show you the systems that I use, the lighting, the aeration, the filtration, the water change system, heating, air exchange, all those things that make this fish room tick. So we'll get started. So if we walk over here, and then I'm going to flip the camera around, let me show you what it looks like when you first walk in the door. So I'm standing in front of the door, and then if you just walked in and shut the door behind you, this is what you would see. To your right, you have a bank of aquariums going down the length of this wall. And then to the left, we have a freezer, very important, full of frozen food. This is a bucket for clean nets, and I'm running a little low. I've got to disinfect. And then this is the workspace. So to the left when you first come in, this is where the computer is. This is the mic and the monitors and the camera up there where I do my live streams. So this is where I'm sitting when I do my live streams, right here at this workstation. Well, let's keep going left. So if you come here, this is the air exchanger, very important. It exchanges, I believe it is 267 liters of air per minute, that it sucks in new air from the outside and takes out old air from the inside of the fish room. And that keeps it nice and comfortable in here. You don't get those smells you can get in an enclosed fish room that's not properly ventilated, and it keeps the humidity right where you want it. And then up here, this is the furnace. It's a natural gas furnace, and this keeps the room at the temperature I want it for a very affordable price. So let me, what else is on this left side? This is important. This is the tankless water heater, and I'll get into the water system in a bit. I want to show you some fish and stuff before we do that. And then a slop sink there for washing stuff out and anytime I need water. Oh, and a fridge, very important. Fridge. That's what I keep live food in, or if I thaw a bunch of frozen food like brine shrimp in the morning, that'll keep the leftovers there and feed that out at lunch or at dinner or whatever. I feed the fish several times a day. So anyway, this is the left-hand side when you're first walking in the door. And then if you're back at the door first coming in, let me show you the fish on this rack. So now I have these set up for functionality. These are not show tanks by any means. I have them set up for ease of maintaining the fish, ease of breeding the fish, and a way to check on their health and just be able to to be able to see every fish clearly and take care of a problem instantly if there is one. So I don't have lots of decorations or anything like that. Each tank is kind of set up the same. Water comes in. Oops, that fell down. I'm gonna have to put something on it so it doesn't do that. Water comes in and comes out that black T right there, and comes in, fills the tank. And on this side is the drain up there. You can kind of see that black sponge back there behind the bubbles. That's where the bulkhead is that drains the water. Then you've got a sponge filter and a box filter, which is actually a cylinder, but still called a box filter. In this tank we have Molokai rainbows, so Militaniata molokai is what these are, or Macolokai I think is how you say it actually. And they're pretty awesome. They're a small species, they don't get very large, and the males are starting to get nice elongated fins, and they're starting to get a nice black margin on the edge of the fins, which is a little hard to see in this tank because it's painted black, but they're a great little fish. So that's what I have on the top tank when you first come in. Then on the bottom are everyone's favorite, the white-cheeked gobies. These are fantastic little fish. And I have one mystery fish in here, which is this one. Not the one sucked on the glass with the big belly there, but the one up here, right there. No idea what that is. It is not a white-cheeked goby. It's some kind of goby, or related to gobies, but it's definitely not a white-cheeked goby. It came in as a contaminant, and I have no idea what it is, but it's a peaceful little fish. It's doing well, and so I don't mind having it. But this is how I set up the white-cheeked gobies. Tons of fun, tons of personality. These are an entertaining species for sure. So this tank is set up the same as all the rest, except for I added some pipes in here so that they can, you know, go have a cave to hang out in if they want to get away, or if they want to spawn, or any of that. Oh, there's a dominant male just came out. If you see how white their cheeks get, that's why they get that name, white-cheeked goby. And the dominant males have kind of bright white cheeks on them. So, yeah, here's another male. Looks a little different, not quite as white on the cheeks, but a little more color on the fins. And no one's really fired up right now. When they really fire, they're pretty gorgeous fish, actually. They get pretty bold markings on them. So that's that. Then right next to them, one of my favorite species ever is the draped fin barb. I have a lot of them. I like them a lot. Nice, peaceful barb. You don't have to worry about aggression with these guys. And not as quick to the food as a lot of other barb species, so they don't really tend to outcompete other fish. I do have a mop in there in case they decide to spawn, lay some eggs. Sorry about the glare, but we're going to have a lot of glare because this is just a tour. When I make the individual videos of the fish, then I turn off all the lights and just put a light on top of the aquarium so you don't get all that glare. But for the tour, we'll have it. So above them, we have these platinum angels. I really like these guys. They came in about dime size. Now the biggest ones are maybe a little bigger than a quarter, maybe getting close to silver dollars, 50-cent piece size, some of these. Anyway, gorgeous fish. I love them because they pop against the black tank, which is pretty awesome. So while we're here at the angelfish tank, well, let me turn around. There you go. I'm going to take a little break from showing the fish. I'm going to show you some of the lighting that I use. It's very simple, it's cheap, and if you're doing a big fish room, it's a decent way to go. It makes it so you can definitely see the fish, but you can't control the color or anything like that of the lights I use. So if you're looking for a solution where you can see the fish, but maybe it's not the highest quality, but hey, it's cheap, this might be something to think about. So these are just shop lights, LED shop lights. I got these on Amazon.com. I think they're around 40 bucks each for a 4-foot light. I like them because I can chain them all together. If you see that, they're all plugged into each other. And so I can put up to 12 lights on a single outlet, which is super nice. And then if I want, I can just turn one off and it doesn't affect the other ones in the chain. So I can control them individually and I can have them all linked up on a single outlet, which means I don't have to use so many timers. So I can use one lighting timer for this entire rack and put 12 lights on it, which is fantastic. Makes it super easy to control. So that's what I use, just cheap fluorescent shop, or not fluorescent, LED shop lights. I got mine from Amazon. Okay, next tank over. All right, these are Trifasciata rainbows. They're pretty awesome, very active. They're not fired right now, it's nighttime. Rainbows tend to fire in the morning. That's when they want to spawn and they really fire up. But they're still a pretty fish. Beautiful rainbow fish, honestly, and active and hardy and easy. Nothing to complain about with these guys. And then some cories on the bottom to take care of bottom stuff. So down below that, Irian red rainbows, one of my favorites. I think one of everybody's favorites. They're just so beautiful. They're like a burgundy wine on chrome. I mean, they're absolutely stunning fish. I really like them a lot. These guys right now, biggest one, just under 3 inches maybe. So I'd say they're around 2 inches on average, 2.5 maybe. 3 inches would be one of the really big ones. Might be around 3 inches. But beautiful fish, really hardy. Yeah, they have grown a lot since I've had them, and they're doing great. Rainbows are nice because they eat anything. They'll eat flake, they'll eat frozen, they'll eat pellets. They're super easy. So that's the first 6 tanks. Then we keep going down the wall. And here we have some Deniside barbs, or roseline barbs, or torpedo barbs, or whatever you want to call them. I call them roseline barbs usually. Beautiful fish. These guys get about 4 inches. The biggest one in here is maybe 2.5. So they still have a lot of growing to do, a lot of color to come in. But they're starting. I did a video of these a while ago and they hadn't got any red in yet really. But if you look, they're starting to get that red that runs from their lip across that black lateral line to the right under the dorsal fin. So it's starting to come in. They're coloring up really nicely. Still have a lot of growing to do, but they're doing great. And they're in with some Aquaria arcuatus, the skunk Aquaria, which are in there with them. Down below that, here is a tank of koi swordtails. Really beautiful fish. These are, most of the koi swordtails I've seen in the past are on a white background, and these are actually on a light gray base. So they're a gray base with the koi colors, so they're pretty awesome. Yeah, different kind of look to these koi swords than I've ever seen before. And then over here there's a beautiful, I love this, it's a clump of Java moss with some Java fern on some driftwood. And I really like it. I don't have a lot of that. It takes forever for it to grow out. But I'm about to split this off, put it in another tank, and grow some more moss. So in 5 years, I'll have moss in all the tanks. It just takes a long time. Now these are one of my favorites, and I'm going to say that a lot because a lot of these fish are my favorite. But if you're looking for a rainbow fish and you've never kept rainbows, then this is where you start. Dwarf neon rainbows. Super hardy, not too expensive, really gorgeous, peaceful, active, fun fish. These guys came in at a little under an inch. They're now about, the biggest one maybe 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches. They're putting on size. They're starting to color up really nicely. The males are starting to get that bright orange or maybe blood red, however you want to describe it, that they get on the dorsal and the caudal fin and the anal fin. So they're starting to look really beautiful. Anyway, super easy rainbow fish. Don't get too big. Top out at about 3 inches, and it's super easy to breed. I get lots of eggs from them in that mop all the time. Little Java moss start down there. It's been going for several months, and that's as big as it's gotten. But it'll come. It just takes forever. So down here, got some more moss, which is pretty exciting. And then these are koi swordtails as well, but these are the tricolor. So you add the black to it. So they're like the other koi swords that I showed you, but they have more black to it. And if you look, you can see some that are pretty much pure gray base. You have the black and the gray, but are missing the orange. So if you order these, I'm not going to send you any that don't have orange on them unless you specifically request that, because that's not what most people are going to be thinking of when they think of a tricolor koi rainbow. But yeah, so this koi strain uses a gray base, and so some of these came out with a gray base on them. But they're awesome. I like swordtails. I know that, let me talk about swordtails a little bit. Sometimes they get a little bit of a bad rap. And that's because they can be fairly aggressive, and you usually run into that aggression in a scenario where you're not keeping a lot of them together. So males can be particularly aggressive to each other, and they want to breed all the time, so they'll harass the females. The trick to swordtails is either get a single male or get several males, but never just get 2 or 3 males, or they'll harass each other a lot. And then never get like just 1 or 2 females with that male. Get several. And if you get a nice group, then they don't harass each other too much. They also don't harass other fish too much if you keep them in a big group. Now, even when they do, they're not that crazy violent or anything. They're just consistent. So it's not like they have big jaws and they're tearing chunks out of anyone. It's nothing like that. They're just kind of a consistent fish that is constantly going to be trying to breed with the females and constantly trying to assert dominance over the other male swords. And so if you only have a small number, that constant harassment over time takes a toll. Now, they generally, in my experience, do that just to their own species, and again, a group will take care of that issue, but they can sometimes harass other fish as well, so just keep an eye on them. But in my opinion, they're not nearly as aggressive or horrible or anything as sometimes you hear about. I've never had a problem keeping them. They were one of the first fish I ever kept, and I only had like a male and female in a 10-gallon in a community tank, and they were just fine. But there were visual barriers in there. The female could go off in the plants if she needed to get away, things like that. So, but just be aware of that. They're like a guppy in their consistency of harassing the females and other males, but with a little more aggression maybe than a guppy, or just a little more quickness than a guppy, I guess. So yeah, that's my take on swords. I like them a lot, but yeah, you have to take some precautions though when you're going to keep them, for sure. All right, so back to these tanks. These are fantastic fish. This is the turquoise rainbow with their algae farm here on the glass. But really a gorgeous fish. Nice blue color, brilliant black margins on the fins that contrast with their kind of light body color. And again, they're in a black tank, so that contrast isn't going to show very well, but they're a really nice fish. And there's very few fish you can find that have a nice blue color on them, but these definitely do. Then down below them, we have a lot of water sprite growing, and then some Java moss with a little Java fern there as well. And then we have some cherry shrimp down here. Now, I got some babies of these, and I think they're about done. I think they came in pretty old because they were all big females. There's a baby there coming down the glass. I hope I caught that on camera. Maybe I didn't. But they came in, they were huge females. I think they were pretty old. They had a batch of babies. There's one there on that eggshell. It's about half an inch now. And then they just gradually started to die off. And I just think it's age with them. But the babies are in there, they're growing out, and they'll eventually get a new generation. So that's what's going on in that tank. And I am probably going to put something else in there as well. I'm thinking maybe I'll move the baby Wapoga red laser rainbows in there maybe, which I'll show you later. So that's row number one. Then very important, down at the floor there is a fan. And it's the Vornado. They're expensive, but let me talk about that. So air circulation is pretty important. You don't want any dead spots. You want the air to flow constantly so that the temperature stays a pretty consistent temperature in the whole fish room, and so that you don't get any spots where it's really muggy in the fish room and where humidity is up high or anything like that. So I put a couple fans down at the end of the row, and then, well, okay, I put 2 fans in the fish room on opposite sides of the room at the ends of the row. And the type of fan is important. You can't skimp on that, not on this size fish room. So I get the Vornados. It's like Tornado but with a V. They're pretty expensive. I think that thing runs about 60, 70 bucks. But I've tried other brands, and they're not nearly as powerful, and they burn out super quickly. And the Vornados last for years. So that's a little thing just to keep in the back of your mind if you're going to build a fish room and are looking for air circulation. That's the brand I've found that works the best. And so it's on the floor, and it's pointed up slightly, so it takes cold air off the floor and blows it across the room and up, so it kind of heats and circulates cold air up as well as across the room. So we're coming to this rack here. And this is a very special fish. This is a Aplochilus blocki. They're from Sri Lanka and southern India. They're hard to find. They only get about an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter. And they're a peaceful killifish. They're very easy to raise, to feed, to spawn. They eat everything, and they're just a really cool fish. So Aplochilus blocki is what I have in here, and then some Corridors on the bottom. I believe it's Malini, yeah, on the bottom here. So that's what's in this tank. If we look below that, one of my favorite fish, I keep saying that, but it's true, Ember Tetras, really like them. And then below that, some more Cories. Ember Tetras, beautiful little fish, super easy, super hardy. And I should show you something in here. So you see those long roots down in the water? That is from this plant right here, which is a Thai basil plant. And then in the tank behind it, I just have basil. So what I do is I drill holes in the tanks and plunk herbs down in there, mint and basil, and they'll root out. It takes a little while, but they will, and they'll just grow in there. And I do that because it makes the fish room smell good. So over here I have some mint, and it grows and it keeps things smelling fresh, which I like. The next tank over, Aplochilus dei, one of my favorite killifish. These are endemic to Sri Lanka. They top out at maybe 2.5 inches or so, and they're gorgeous. The males and the females are both pretty good looking. In a lot of killifish, only the males have color. But hang on, I'm trying to find a good look where the light isn't just blinding the camera. Well, I'm just gonna pull back and hope that works. But anyway, they're in most killifish, the females are just dull brown, but in this species, the females are, in my opinion, about as pretty as the males. They don't have as long of a fin, but see that one with the black bars kind of on the bottom of its body, the back half of the body, that's a female. And then this one here with the pointed fins and the orange and yellow on the fins, that's a male. So that's the difference, but they're both really pretty. And below that, some driftwood with some moss growing out and some java fern. And under that, I don't know if you can see it over there, but that's a Betachinoides. There's a few Betachinoides in here hanging out. So that's that aquarium. Below that, through the algae farm, are a bunch of Odessa barbs, which are super quick and hate the camera, so they're going to be hard to film. But that's Odessa barbs, Corridors Malini under that, and then there was a random female guppy that came in with this order that I did not order, but she came in as a contaminant, and she dropped some fry, and now we're on our second generation of those little fry. And they're like retro guppies. They're like the guppies you used to see, you know, in the books back in the 70s. So there's some guppies in there as well. Moving over, this Parkinsoni rainbows, one of my favorites, Melitania parkinsoni. They're just starting to get their color in, and they're really pretty. They're like flame in the water. These guys are pretty small, maybe about 2 inches or so. They'll get a lot bigger than that, but they're a really cool fish. Like them. There's some Cories on the bottom. Alright, and then next row over. So these are some of that gray base sword. So these are swordtails with just the gray base. You might hear them called ghost swords sometimes. And they're really in here just to keep this tank cycled. Until I get more fish to put in it. But yep, they're living life, loving it, having a 75-gallon all to themselves. Below that, these are some rice fish. These are the Wawores, or the Daisy's rice fish. There's one of those retro guppies that came in. Pretty cool little guy. But I like these rice fish. It probably is not picking up on the camera, and it's hard for me to pick it up when I take pictures or video this fish, but the males are this kind of iridescent steel blue. They're really cool. And the females are pretty much just a tan, but both the males and the females have these bright blue eyes, like a lamp eye killifish that just glow, which I really like. Super easy to spawn, very hardy, nice rewarding fish, and under them is Corridors mete. One tank over, we have some more Aplochilus dei up top, and under them we have some peacock gudgeons, which are doing great. They're beautiful. A good peacock gudgeon is hard to beat in color. These guys are small, inch, maybe 1.25 inches on some of the bigger ones, but they're growing a little bit. Slowly but surely they're growing out here, and beautiful fish. Below them we have male tequila sunrise guppies, which I have because they're my favorite guppy. I just think they're so beautiful. They're bright, they're shiny, they're happy. You know, what's not to like? They're an awesome fish and super easy, super hardy. And then next to them are the female tequila sunrise. And yeah, above the tequila sunrise females, I have the colony of Limia perugiae, sometimes called the Haitian lima. And I don't know if I can, let's see if they'll come out and play, but there's some fry in here that, oh, there's one. So they just dropped some fry, and there's one right there in the plants. Let me see if I can get a close-up here of that little guy. Oh, yep, there it is. Okay, I'm gonna try this. Hopefully this doesn't make for just a horrible video. There he is. Oops. Went in too far. Hang on, I'm gonna try this. Let me see if I can find him. Oh, I think yeah, there he is. Okay. One more time. It's right there under that leaf. The camera is very confused. Well, he's there under that leaf, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to show it to you or not. He's looking straight on. Well, I tried, but there's so there's a fresh batch of Limia perugiae in there, in case you didn't see that little fry. They're a gorgeous fish, very hard to find, very hardy. I love them. The males are super beautiful, and again, they're one that doesn't show up that well in video or on pictures because a lot of their color is in this like gleaming iridescence that reflects off their scales, and that just doesn't pick up well on camera. So, but anyway, neat fish. So next row over, nothing down here because that tank came in totally busted that was going to go on this rack on the bottom, and then I've got these two tanks here which I need to seal. I broke them and I need to reseal. It's an easy fix, I just haven't had the time. And here's another tank. This is more Daisy's rice fish and more peacock gudgeons in this tank. Let's see, moving over from that, this is the colony of Florida flagfish, which all my babies came from, and they're one of my favorite killies, just an awesome fish. Next to them are the Wapoga red laser rainbow fish breeding colony. This is Melanotania rubra, and they are fantastic. In fact, I wonder if I can show you some eggs. I'm just going to pull this mop out. Let's see if we can show you some magic. One-handed, this is a trick. It's a little bit hard, so bear with me for a sec. I'm getting the mop out. Okay, hang on. I gotta find the stand. So come on over to the stand. Let's stick this in here. Okay, so here's the mop. Let me fasten this down. Let's see if we can show you this here. Okay. So check this out. I don't know if you can see all those eggs, but there are a ton in this mop. This colony breeds like crazy, and I haven't picked these eggs in a while just because I have so many already and so many fry growing out. But if I went through this, there would be a couple hundred eggs in here. So that's just one spot, right? I'm not even like combing through the mop, which I'm not going to do now and bore you. But anyway, rainbow fish are get off the stand. Rainbow fish are super easy, in my experience. Easy to breed, easy to keep, easy to raise. The trick is just they have small fry, so you just have to make sure that you have small food to feed the fry, and they grow fairly slowly compared to like killifish and stuff. Killifish grow super fast, but they're easy. and they're fun, and I don't know, rainbow fish are kind of awesome. So anyway, let's go to the next row. Well, I can show you this. This is the system at work. So this is draining. Water is flowing from those black outlets back there on that PVC right there down to the different tanks, and then it is coming out here where it's kind of like a sump. After that, it's kind of sucked out and disposed of. So that's how the water change system works. So here's where we're at in the fish room, just to give you a sense of where we're at. So we just came in the door, right? We saw this rack along the wall, all those. We saw these two banks of tanks, and we just saw this bank of tanks here, where the rainbow fish are right here. So if we go over to the next bank of tanks, so these are the dirty nets here. I need to disinfect them, put them back in the clean net bucket once they're disinfected. But this bank of tanks is where we're going. So up here we have some Santa Maria endlers. Really neat endler. Bright orange belly contrasting with that bright black dorsal surface of the body, and then just some cool colors and contrasts. I really like this fish. They're pretty neat. So that's what's in there mostly. They're on top of some trilineatus cories, false Julie cories. Below them we have the lyre-tail or leer-tail swordtails. These are unique. For those that don't know, this is a swordtail that the males can't breed if they have a lyre tail, because it extends their reproductive organ and makes it a little bit useless. Well, completely useless. So they can't fertilize the females. So to get these fish, you have to breed a male that isn't a lyre tail to a lyre tail female, or a female that's heterozygous for lyre tail, and that's how you get them. And that's why sometimes they can be a little more expensive, because you can't breed lyre tail to lyre tail. So anytime you breed this fish, a large portion of them come out non-lyre tail, because the dad was not a lyre tail. He was just someone that carried the gene for lyre tail. And so it can take a few steps to get a generation of these. But they're pretty cool fish. Up here, more of my favorite killifish, not my favorite, but more of one of my favorite killifish, Aplochilus dei. And then on the bottom here, we've got some Corydorus habrosus hanging out. Little pygmy cory, really fun. Love Corydorus habrosus. They're a fun fish. Ton of personality. Below that, clown barbs. If you can see them through the algae. So clown barbs are amazing. These guys right here are an inch to an inch and a half maybe. They have a lot of color. They're fun. They're peaceful, but they're very active. And there's some Julie cories in there as well, or trilineatus actually. So I like the clown barbs. They get big though. They get about 4 inches, which is, you know, decent size. So be aware of that. In here we have some rice fish, and below them we have some more cories. These are more Corydorus habrosus, and they're basically in here to keep this tank cycled as well. Is what they're doing. And then another tank of this is the last tank of Aplochilus dei, on top of more Corydorus habrosus. So that's that rack. One rack over, we've got, let me back up so you can kind of see. So that there is a 125-gallon aquarium, which eventually will go behind me when I'm sitting at the computer, so that we have a better background for the live streams. At least that's the plan, but right now it's just stored up there. And then down here, more rice fish. The water change system is on, so you can see that fresh water coming in. That's the automatic water change system. But anyway, more rice fish, and on top of them is some albino Corydorus aeneas. I'm shipping these guys out tomorrow, actually, or not tomorrow. today's Saturday, Monday actually. So next to them, they're gonna run and hide, but there's a bunch of zebra loaches in here, which whenever I walk by, run and hide until I feed them and then they come out, but you can kind of see one in there poking his head out. They hate the camera though, they're very shy. Then I also separated out some draped fin barb females to fatten them up for spawning. Then I put some tequila sunrise guppy males in there just to kind of help the loaches feel safe. You know, they look for fish swimming out above them, and if the fish are out above them, then they're like, oh good, there's no predators, we can come out. So that's kind of a trick to get loaches to come out. And here are more clown barbs on top of more zebra loaches, with some pipe in there for the loaches to hide in, like we had in the other loach tank. Again, this is an example of that root structure there is to that basil plant there, which just kind of helps the fish room smell good. So that's that aquarium. Now this is a bank of 6, let me back up, am I zoomed in? Oh, that's why. I'm super zoomed in, sorry. This is a bank of 6 20-gallon longs, 3 on this side, 3 on the other side. And in here I'm doing live food. So there's a little moss growing out in there. And then there's a big wad of blackworms in there that I'm cultivating, and some other wads of blackworms throughout here. And I don't breed a ton of the blackworms. I don't get a lot of production, but just enough that I can occasionally take out some to feed the fish. And down here, there's some blackworms, but really this is about scuds in here, or amphipods. So let's see if I can find some. So there's one right there, that amphipod hanging out, just going through the mulm and eating. I basically feed the blackworms and the amphipods old fish food, or fish food that I don't want to feed the fish. So like algae wafers and shrimp pellets and cheap fish food basically. And they also chow down on leaves and other decaying vegetable and organic matter. Down here, same thing. Then before we're about to go down this bank, before we do though, very important, a work table. This is a great place to prepare food. This is a great place to pack fish. There's my sealer. I used to seal the bags when I'm shipping fish. Speaking of which, right behind me here is the oxygen that I put in the bags to ship the fish. Pure oxygen just helps a ton with that. So work table, don't leave home without it. Very important to have some workspace. In here, let's see, I don't know if you can see this, but this is kind of how I start the fry when they're very newly hatched. In here is a bunch of baby rice fish. You see them darting around. So that's Daisy's rice fish. And then on the bottom, those white things, that's baby Corydorus aeneas, the albinos. And they're awesome. They're pretty darn big, and they eat anything. I like raising baby cories. It's a ton of fun. So baby cories on the bottom, rice fish on the top is what's going on in there, in that little fry container. Then these are the other 3 of the 20 long bank, and that's raising amphipods and some blackworms. So there's a big pile of blackworms there. Hopefully it's getting picked up on the camera. Now this rack is one of my favorites. It's where I raise babies, so it's basically dedicated to breeding. So up here, a bunch of guppies that I've pulled out of the guppy tank. So yay for guppies. In here there's a male betta rubra who's holding a mouthful of eggs, who is probably hiding in that flower pot, so we're not going to be able to see him, but that's what his setup is like. Some plants on the bottom, some pipes and pots to hang out in. Oh wait, there he is. Oh no, yeah, there he is. I don't know if you can see his face sticking out of that black tube, but that's where he's at, right there. You can see his nose there. That right there is his nose sticking out of that black tube. Anyway, he's got a mouthful of eggs, so hopefully those will hatch. He's got another week, I think. These are a bunch of babies of those Limia perugiae. So they're breeding like crazy. These guys are getting big. They're over ½ an inch now. So it's almost time to move them to a larger aquarium. So these are 5.5 gallon aquariums, and I change the water like 8 times a day on this automatically. So that's how I can fit this many fish in that size tank. And I do that with fry because it's important with fry that you keep them in smaller tanks so that the food is concentrated around them. So if you keep them in a big tank, you put some food in, they won't find it, or you'll have to put so much food in that if they do find it, a lot of the food is wasted because the tank's so big. So if you put enough food in a large tank that the fry will find it, you're basically ending up with a lot of rotten food, which is horrible for the baby fish. So small tank, lots of water changes, you can put in the food and they'll find it and eat it all. And that really helps a lot. This is a female betta rubra sticking her nose out of that black pipe right there. Oh, she just went back in, but her nose is still sticking out. She's the mama of the mouthful of eggs that the male is currently brooding. Then down below are some more baby guppies. And let's see here. These are a whole bunch of baby Wapoga red laser rainbow fry, which, let's see if, I don't know if you can see them in there. They're tiny. And there's the fresh water coming in on the water change system. But hopefully you can see that big cloud of babies kind of up at the top there. I think you can see them, yeah. You can see them against the plants, right? So there's a couple hundred baby rainbow fish in there. Then this is another female rubra. Her nose is sticking out of that pipe right there. And this is a betta chinoides in this tank here. Then over here are baby betta rubra. So there's one in the back corner there. They're about 1/4 inch now. So he's at the top in the back corner. That's where he's at. Hopefully you can see him okay. And then let's see if I can get any more on camera for you. There's about a dozen of them in here. Okay, there's one in the back here by that lava rock, kind of behind it. Man, this focus is horrible. There you go. You see that little guy? It's a 1/4 inch long betta rubra fry. It's growing out there. They eat microworms and brine shrimp, and they love it. So about a dozen of those hiding in there. This is the live food rack. So this is a bunch of banana worms and microworms. And I keep a lot of cultures so that there's always at least one booming at any given time, so I can get enough food. And then up here, the fruit fly cultures. They're just, these ones, see all those pupae? These are just about to bloom in a big, big way. So these are the small species here. I think it's Hydei or Hydei is the name of that. And then over here I have the large ones, which is, oh, I forget which is which. One's Melanogaster and one's Hydei or something like that. But so this is some live food. Down here is vinegar eels. Super easy. Everyone should have some of these. Set them and forget them. 1 part water to 1 part vinegar. Slice of apple in there and some vinegar eels, and that thing will just go forever. They're awesome. Then this is the brine shrimp hatching station. When I go to collect the brine shrimp, I don't have any going right now, but when I go to collect the brine shrimp, I just turn on this light, turn off the air, turn on this light, and that makes all the brine shrimp kind of congregate by the light. And then when they're all congregated, I turn off the light and I open this valve, and the brine shrimp come out here and just go into a container that I put there to collect them. It makes it super easy to collect them. So these are each a 2-liter container for the brine shrimp hatching. Alright, so this is one of the tanks of the baby rainbow fish. These are Wapoga red laser rainbow babies. I don't know how many are in here, but I'm going to guess about 100. And the biggest one is a little over ½ an inch or so. And they're not different sizes because they're out competing each other. They're different sizes because some of them are a couple weeks younger than some of the others in here. So there's just a little bit of an age difference. And then down below is another tank full of Wapoga red laser rainbows on top of some Habrosus cories. You can see the fresh water coming in because the water change system is going right now. But there's another 100 or so of them in here. And that's on top of a blackworm culture. So this used to be a blackworm culture, and then I put the babies in there, and so they're growing on top of the blackworm culture. And that's something I do to keep cycles alive. So when I have an empty tank, I'll often put a big bunch of blackworms in there and then just feed them and keep them alive. And that does a couple things. That grows live food, but it also keeps the tank alive and it keeps the cycle going. So I'll do that, or I'll throw a bunch of snails in, or a bunch of gramaris in, something. So I throw some kind of organism in there and just keep feeding them and multiply that colony, so it keeps the cycle going. And then when I'm ready to put fish in, there's a whole bunch of live food in the tank, and it's great for everybody. So that's a little trick for anyone that has empty tanks occasionally. So these are the babies of the American flag fish, Jordanelle floridae. Pardon all the algae on the front of the tank, but look how well these guys are doing. They're awesome. And there's, gosh, I don't know how many in here, 150, 200. There's a ton in here, and they're just fantastic, fat little fish. Really great fish, easy to raise, super easy. And down here is a bunch more of them. They're all hanging under the moss right now. These are the larger ones. So as they get big in that top tank, I take them out and put them in here. So the larger ones end up in this tank, so we're not, out competing each other. But there's another 100 of them or so in here. And the biggest one down here is, a little over half an inch or so. But they're already getting adult colors. They're starting to sex out. These tanks on the bottom are all empty of fish. And they're just, they have blackworms and stuff in them to keep the cycle going. This is a breeding colony of Corydoras arcuatus, which is probably going to be really hard to see on video because they're under the sponge filter there. But the skunk cory breeding colony. Then this is a breeding colony of Corydoras trilineatus, which is what is always sold as Corydoras julii. So if you're getting Corydoras julii in the store, they're probably these, Corydoras trilineatus. Awesome fish. And then this is a breeding colony of albino Corydoras aeneas. And these guys breed all the time. In fact, they're probably breeding right now. And the trick to these guys is food. So if you want to breed Corydoras, let me get somewhere where there's better light. There we go. If you want to breed Corydoras, the trick is just to feed them. Feed them and keep the water clean. Catfish can eat a ton. I swear they can eat their weight in food every day. I mean, I put in a lot of food and I keep it in front of them. And if you do that, they'll spawn for you pretty regularly. The trick with that is just make sure you're doing a lot of water changes to keep up with the waste, right? That's really important. So I've showed you the fish and I showed you a couple of the systems, but let me show you, now that we've seen the fish, let me show you kind of the equipment. Let me show you how the fish room runs and all that. So anyone that's not into that, I guess now is the time to check out. But if you're into fish rooms and how they're built and how they function, or thinking of building a fish room or something, you might want to stay tuned because I might have some good tips for you. So let's start. So here's how the fish room works. Water comes in and it comes to this tankless water heater. From that tankless water heater, it goes to this mixing valve. And that mixing valve, sorry, I'm draining some water. I better move that jar so it doesn't clog that drain. That would be bad. So that mixing valve gets the water at 75 degrees, which I know because I have a thermometer right there. And then from there, it runs over through these pipes on the ceiling to these carbon block filters. And I frequently get questions, how do you remove chlorine from your water? And this is how. These are amazing. They're fantastic. They take care of it for you. So I have 2 of them for redundancy, and 3-4 times a year. This is the one that the water comes in first, so I'll remove that one. Then I'll take this one, move it here, and put a new one here. So that's how I manage that system. This lets me know what the pressure in the system is. This is a tee-off, so I can get fresh dechlorinated water anytime I need to out of this hose. So the water comes through this, and then let me show you where it ends up. it ends up here in this manifold. This is all controlled by these are all Hunter valves controlled by a Hunter sprinkler system. So this is basically for irrigating your yard is what this is meant for. And each of these fires at one time. So that one will go, and then that one will go, and then that one will go. And you can set the time and duration and frequency for when they go to control how much water you're giving to any specific part of the system. So from here, the water flows to that PVC system with the black plastic valves in it, which I hate. I mean, they're plastic, which scares the heck out of me, but so far they've been fine. From there it comes down into that T, into the tank, and then drains out the bulkhead on the other side of the tank. And it's pretty important that the bulkhead be on the other side of the tank, because the idea is to make it so that as much as possible old dirty water is draining and not the fresh water you just put in, right? So if you're doing an automatic system, keep the drain as far away from the incoming water as you can, right? So then after that, here's the back of the tanks. You can see all the bulkheads here. Comes down this and then into this pipe here. And this is just a, what is it? I think it's a 3-inch pipe. Has holes drilled in the top. The drain tubes go down there, and then the pipe itself drains into here, which has a sump pump in it. Then after that, it drains up and out of the system. And that's how I deal with the water. While we're up here, here's the air. So this thing is really quiet. This is a linear piston pump from Gemco. I highly recommend Gemco. I highly recommend linear piston pumps. This thing powers the entire system, and with quite a bit to spare for air. It's quiet, it's energy efficient, and I love it. So from that pump, the air comes through this line and into this PVC loop, which goes around the entire fish room on the outside, and then has one pipe that passes across the top of each of the rows of tanks, so that you don't have any one spot in the fish room where you have too much pressure. So that helps equalize the air pressure and make sure that the air is distributed evenly. Otherwise, you're gonna have one tank that bubbles a ton, and then across the room you'll have an aquarium that doesn't get enough air, and you're constantly gonna be trying to balance that. So instead of that, create a loop and use a loop system, and that will take care of that problem for you. Now on lighting, so all the lights are on timers. These are just cheap little timers off Amazon, and they have this on-off switch. So if the timer's off but you want the light on, you just flick that and the light will go on. So I think each of these, I don't remember how much these were, but they're pretty cheap. So it's an on-off switch and a timer. So if I'm in here late at night, I can turn the light on and keep working. Next to that, you'll see a night light. There's a night light in every row, and that's just to simulate moonlight at night. In the wild, the fish aren't ever in like pitch black, right? There's moonlight, there's starlight, there's, well, hell, there's tons of cities reflecting a ton of light into the environment now, right? So the fish are usually not in pitch black. And if you're breeding fish, this is important. A lot of fish, if they're not guarding the eggs and they're eating the eggs and all that, one of the problems can be your room might be too dark. So they absolutely can't see the eggs or the nesting site, and they might get nervous or just get lost, or I don't know. I'm not a fish. I don't really know exactly if they get lost, but you know what I mean. They can't see. They need a little bit of ambient light. So night lights help with that and make it so that if fish are breeding, they can see the spawn, they can see the fry, they can see the eggs, they can take care of the babies. So if you have a cichlid that's constantly swallowing, or a gudgeon, or a goby, or a betta, or any other kind of fish that takes care of its eggs, and you're having a hard time getting them to do that, see if you have some kind of night light or something that you can put. You don't want it shining brightly right into the tank, but just a little light spilling into the tank so that it's still nighttime, but they can see enough to take care of their babies and their eggs. Oh, I skipped a tank. I don't know how. down here, I didn't show you these guys at all, did I? So this is Limia nigrofasciata, the humpback limia, and they're an awesome, easy live bearer, fairly uncommon and super easy. And there's like a baby right there in the plants. I think I've shown it to you. Oh, you just got all the fish just jumped over. There it is behind all those adult fish. There's a little baby back there in the plants. There's several in there. Really easy to breed, neat fish. Electrical, so I have a bunch of these. They're all installed in the ceiling, so electricity is high up in the ceiling, so that if a tank leaks or water drips, it's not going to drip down onto an outlet. And then those are connected to a GFI system in the circuit breaker. So if water does get on any electrical equipment, you're pretty safe with the GFI. If you don't have a GFI, you can have a big problem. You can have a fire, you can get injured. GFI just adds dimensions of security, so I'd highly recommend GFI outlets if you have outlets in your fish room, which, duh, you're going to need to, right? So the racks, so these are the racks. This is kind of the Ted Judy system, where you route out in the stand in this 2x4 a section, and you add the horizontal 2x4 to it. And so far they've all been great. This is how I've had past fish rooms as well. I've never had a problem with it. I know some people do. I think it's because they're on unlevel surfaces though. Let me show you what I mean. So this one I built that way, and then you'll notice I ended up putting plywood across it. And that's because the rack started leaning on me. So I got plywood and installed it, bolted and screwed it in so that I could keep it square. But that's not the rack's fault. That's because this floor in this particular section of the fish room, it's very, very uneven. And so I had shimmed the rack and thought I had it all nice and square, but apparently I didn't do it quite right. So the rack started bowing. So it was a pain. They drain all the water. So the rack was light enough to position, re-square it, reposition it, re-shim it, and just so that could never happen again, I put that plywood bracing on it, and that's pretty strong stuff. I think it's 3/4 inch plywood, and maybe it's 5/8, I don't remember. But anyway, that rack ain't moving again. So if you've used the Ted Judy system or the 2x4 system and you're running into issues with it leaning or bowing or anything like that on you, just a sheet of plywood will take care of that. So just a tip. All right, so what else do I need to show you? I've showed you the furnace. I've showed you, I think, just about everything. I feel like I'm missing something, but that's inevitable, I guess, in an unscripted thing like this. Oh, the floor and the insulation. So for those that don't know, a lot of you know, but for those that don't, this stuff all around the fish room is insulation. It's spray-on foam. I had it done professionally. It's 2 to 4 inches thick, depending on if it's on the walls or up in the ceilings. And yeah, it's sure ugly, but man, does it do a great job of keeping the fish room warm. So that's what this stuff is all over the entire fish room. And it is just the best. Yeah, it's super ugly, and I know people have told me, well, you could paint it and stuff, but it's a working fish room. I'm really not that worried about it. It's not a showroom or anything. Plus, at this point, I already have all the aquariums in and everything, and I ain't moving them unless like something drastic happens. But here I'm in Wyoming, and the temperature here can get to 35 below, and below zero, not below freezing, but below 0 Fahrenheit. And this room stays, right now I'm looking at the thermometer and it is 77 degrees. Let me show you this. So this, oh, it's more than that, it's 81. Well, I've got to turn that down. It was 77 earlier today, as you can see under there. That's why I said that. So it's 81 degrees and 34% humidity. So that's not bad at all. Oh, you know why it's 81 degrees? It's 81 degrees because I shut off those Vornado fans that I told you about earlier that I have on the floor to make the video because they're a little noisy. They're not super noisy, but you know, they blow a lot of air, and so I turned them off for the video, and so now the air isn't circulating quite as much, so it's 81 here and cooler somewhere else. So as soon as I'm done making this video, I'll turn them on and we'll get back to about 77 degrees is where the fish room sits. But anyway, that insulation is the best thing ever. It's quite an expense up front, but once it's done, I mean, temperature control wise, it's been amazing. I don't think I would ever do it another way. The other nice thing is you don't have to have studs or anything like that, and so you don't have sheetrock. You know, there's not stuff on the walls that can get moldy, which so far has been great. So I think that that's, well, I can show you this, electricity. So I had this done by a professional electrician. I am not messing with electricity personally myself. I don't know anything about it. And then this is a meter which meters how much electricity we use in the fish room, so we know the difference between what we're using in the fish room and in the house, so we can keep that separate and yeah, calculate how much it costs to run the fish room and things. So that's gonna, again, this fish room's only been up and running really for a few months now, so it's gonna take a while before I know exactly how much it costs to run, because I have to get more data before I know that. But that's what that electrical meter is for. So, oh, I'm going to talk about my floor, and then I think we'll be done. So the floor, this thing. So I like this floor a lot. This is epoxy, and it's water resistant. It has a non-slip coating on it, so when it gets wet, you're not going to slip and fall and injure yourself. And absolutely fantastic. After doing this, I don't think I'd ever do it another way. Watertight, looks good, and works like a charm, and doesn't have any issue with getting wet or anything like that. And while I'm down here, if you look under the tanks, I have all this storage as well. So all these black storage containers under the racks. So when you build your racks, if you're making a fish room, you might want to find the tubs you want to use so you can make the shelves the right size, so you can keep all the storage in watertight bins under your racks. It's a good use of space, it looks decent, and it allows you to not have a cluttered, junky fish room. So I think that's about it. That's the tour. The fish and the systems and everything about it. I don't think I missed anything. I guess I could have, but it's not coming to mind right now. So anyway, that's what we look like here at dansfish.com. We sell all these fish, so if you're interested in fish, visit the website, and you can purchase the fish we looked at today. Anyway, if you have any questions about this or whatever, you can drop me an email, dan@dansfish.com. You can also reach me through Facebook or through YouTube, but email's generally yeah. So YouTube's communication software isn't always the best, and Facebook isn't always the best, so if you really need an answer, email's probably the best. But yeah, so anyway, I hope you enjoyed the tour. This is the facility, and yeah, I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you later.